If I were going to sum up the readings in a single word today, I would say harsh. Harsh. You know, Nancy, I know you did a good job on that reading, but somehow I have a feeling that this is one of the few times that Isaiah was kind of harsh with the people. I mean, to call people princes of Sodom, people of Gomorrah. Well, you and I all know that Sodom and Gomorrah was that early example in Genesis of this culmination of evil. God couldn't even find 10 good people in Sodom and Gomorrah that would have brought about their being spared. No. They were completely depraved, had completely handed themselves over to evil. Now, I'm just going to say we don't know if exactly that was what happened, but I'm going to say the reality is that something happened down near the Dead Sea, and there were 2 cities that were destroyed. And then people say, well, that was God punishing them for all their evil. Exactly what happened back then, we don't know, but they became the paradigm of evil. And so to call the people, you know, your people of Gomorrah, this was no compliment. This was not something that people said, well, thank you. You know, my dad remembered that his older brother, 10 years older than he, when he was small, used to call him Beelzebul. He always thought it was a term of endearment until he got older and discovered, no, that isn't what his brother meant at all. You know? No, this was not any term of endearment. But what Isaiah says is that, you know, it's okay, just realize this, and if you change, it will all be made right. God is merciful, and God will make it right with you. But he does ask us to act. You know, he talks about acting with justice and kindness and mercy, of looking upon the lowly and the little and taking care of them. That's part of this reform. In the gospel, we hear Jesus talk about the scribes and Pharisees. And you know, I always find it interesting that Jesus never spoke harshly to anyone except the religious people. That always makes me just a tad bit nervous, you know? Especially when I'm up here with vestments on and they're talking about wearing phylacteries and widening their tassels and all those things. I'm going, okay, you know, pay attention to this, Howell. Pay attention. You know, the reality is that we have to practice what we preach. It isn't just something that we have to say, but we have to live the gospel. And that's true of us all. You know, I find it fascinating with children. You know, they are so absorbent. You know, they just pick up stuff. And every now and then a kid will say something and you go, I wonder where they picked up that from, you know? They heard it at home, you know? And you know, my point is that isn't the way the parents would want to present themselves in public. But they have this little mirror that somehow reflected it later on, you know? And it's, again, to live what we believe, that's always the hard part. But that's what we're called to do. Jesus ends this passage from the Sermon on the Mount by talking about who we should call what? Rabbi means teacher, master is about the same meaning, and calling anyone father. I've heard that more than a few times over my lifetime. You know, why do you let people call you father? Don't you know the gospel? And I always say, well, let me ask you a question. When you're filling out those forms and it asks for the name of your father, who do you put down? God or the male that gave life to you? And then they just kind of back off. They use it as an attack. The point that Jesus is making is, who really is the one we look to? Who is the one we look to? Are we trying to do what the Lord asks? You know, on Sunday in the letter to the Philippians, that passage that we heard said, Paul said, be imitators of me as I imitate the Lord. You know, that's what we're all supposed to do. You and I, who are children of a God of mercy and kindness and compassion, we're supposed to reflect that to the waiting world. To do that when it's convenient and when it's inconvenient. To do it in every circumstance. During Lent, we're asked to look at our lives and to say, where could we become better? And the invitation, the place where the Lord asks us to look today is how we really act day to day. Can people see evidence of God's love, God's kindness, God's compassion in us? You know, I always think back to something I heard many years ago, and maybe you've heard it too, but I'm going to end with this anyway. You know, the question was, if for whatever reason the government started to arrest Christians and imprison them, would there be enough evidence in your life to convict you? It always makes me think. It did then, and it still does now. Lord, please, may there always be enough evidence in my life so that I can be recognized without ever having to explain.